5:02 a.m. and I'm standing in my kitchen in my ex-husband's old t-shirt, staring at my phone like it just slapped me. The screen is still lit up. One message. One sentence. Don't go in today. Trust me. From Aaron Patel, the senior counsel at our biggest client. The $412 million kind of client. The kind that doesn't send cryptic messages before dawn unless something's about to explode and you're standing on the fault line. The first thing that hit me wasn't panic. It was muscle memory. I checked the calendar. We had the 11 a.m. pitch today. A year of relationship building, strategy sessions, hand-holding, PowerPoint CPR, and now, silence. My thumb hovered over the reply button. I typed, "Why?" Deleted it. Typed, "Are you serious?" Backspaced that too. Eventually, I just sent one word. Okay. Then I put the phone down and poured my coffee with the same steady hands I used to hold pressure hoses when I worked night shift in college, steam cleaning fryers. You learn when to flinch and when to brace. Look, while we're here, before the storm starts, do me a quick solid. Tap that subscribe button and like this story. No pressure, but 90% of folks listen without hitting that little button, and it genuinely helps the team keep the lights on and the office gossip flowing. All right, back to hell. By 6:30 a.m., the sun was peeking over my neighbor's busted trampoline, and I was still trying to decode that damn message. Aaron's not dramatic. He doesn't do cryptic. This was intentional, a flare in the sky. But I wasn't about to call him. That felt like spooking a deer mid-stare down. Instead, I showered, dressed. Not for work, but for something. Something quiet. I put on the necklace my daughter made from glitter glue and macaroni shells, and sat in the living room, laptop closed, watching the seconds crawl on the microwave clock. It felt like waiting for a tornado you could already hear in the soil. At 9:15 sharp, it came. Subject line, decision final. No greeting, no signature. Just a short body of text from our brand new VP, Eli Daniels, the type who introduces himself with a LinkedIn QR code and a TED Talk quote. You've made your choice. We'll handle the 11 a.m. pitch without you. HR will process your exit. Good luck. No call, no meeting, no chance to explain. Just an execution by keyboard. I stared at the screen. My brain processed the word exit like it was written in Braille in gasoline. I sat there so still, the condensation on my coffee mug dried before I moved again. He thinks I no-showed, that I ghosted, that I sabotaged my own pitch. That's what this was. A trap with a smug tech bro trigger. 2 weeks ago, Eli took my hand at the staff meeting and said I was legacy DNA, his exact phrase, like I was some molar fossil embedded in the jawbone of a company that needed a marketing facelift. Said we had to rebrand client relationships, whatever the hell that meant. Said people like me, people with long-standing trust and zero ego, were holding back his institutional evolution. I smiled, took my notes, watched him reroute all my slide decks to the strategy pod. I knew he was circling. I just didn't think he'd strike before coffee. But I didn't argue. I didn't scream. Didn't even hit reply. Instead, I stood up, walked to my office, opened the fireproof drawer and pulled out the hard copy of the original master contract with the client. The one I negotiated 3 years ago after their second CFO crash, landed the Q2 numbers, and we saved them from defaulting on a compliance clause. The contract that had one weird little clause buried in a sea of corporate oatmeal. Key person dependency. My name was on that clause. And if anyone had actually read it, they'd know. But something told me not to shout. Not yet. So I printed it, folded it, slipped it in my bag like a secret map. Then I walked out the door. The HR office was exactly how you'd imagine a corporate breakup lounge. Beige walls, fake ferns, and the kind of neutral art that screams, "We paid someone's cousin for this." When I walked in, no one made eye contact, like they were afraid catching my gaze would turn them to salt. The receptionist gave me a laminated smile and gestured to a small conference room like I was checking in for a colonoscopy. Inside was a junior HR rep who looked barely old enough to rent a car, nervously flipping through a manila folder like it might bite him. Kayla Bennett? He asked, as if I might be someone else impersonating the woman who'd kept their largest client from self-destructing for the last 3 years. I know why I'm here, I said. Calm, level. The way you speak when someone's trying to bait you into rage they can weaponize. He blinked at me, half apologetic, half robotic. This is your voluntary separation paperwork. You'll retain COBRA eligibility. Final check will include unused PTO, and per your contract, non-compete terms begin immediately upon exit. Voluntary. That word sat there like spoiled meat on the table between us. I didn't volunteer, I said quietly. He cleared his throat. Per the email and your decision not to appear for the client presentation, it's been processed as a voluntary non-participation. So, in terms of documentation, it becomes a voluntary separation unless contested. I stared at the pen. I thought of contesting it, of launching into a diatribe about loyalty, legacy, and the invisible hours I'd bled into that account. But I could already hear Eli's voice, smug and sanitized, saying, "She made a choice not to show. We made a choice to respond." And I realized, the more I argued, the more oxygen I'd be giving his fire. So I signed, initialed, dated. The HR rep blinked in visible relief, like he'd just survived a hostage negotiation without anyone peeing themselves. He stood up, reaching awkwardly for a handshake I didn't offer. "Do you want to say goodbye to your team?" "I already did," I said, and walked out. Back at my desk, I powered on my laptop one last time. Ignored the dozen "sorry to see you go" Slack messages from coworkers who hadn't even looked me in the eye last week. Instead, I opened my personal Gmail, attached a PDF copy of the original client contract, the real one, the one with the key person clause still intact, and emailed it to myself with the subject line, "In case of fire, break glass." Then I deleted the email from my sent folder. Not because I was trying to cover my tracks, but because I didn't want their servers touching one more damn thing I built. I shut the laptop, folded the screen down like a coffin lid, and left it on the desk. No dramatic exits, no box of sad desk plants. Just the quiet goodbye of someone who knew they were walking out of a burning building before anyone smelled the smoke. But let me back up. You need the context, the scent trail of how we got here. 2 weeks earlier, Eli Daniels had swept into the Monday leadership meeting with his signature scent of expensive cologne and amateur arrogance. Clicked through a PowerPoint labeled Reimagining Enterprise Relationship Strategy, like it was the Rosetta Stone of corporate salvation. Slide after slide of words like synergy, nimbleness, and modernized touchpoints. I'd asked one question. "Are you planning to restructure account stewardship?" He'd smiled like a cat who'd already pooped in your shoe. "Exactly, Kayla. Your legacy here. And legacies are what we build from, not on." Translation: you're in the way. He didn't understand the client. He thought relationships were plugs you could yank and replace with shiny new USB-C personalities. He thought trust was a mood board. But our client wasn't a mood. They were a minefield. I'd earned every inch of their trust with crisis sweats, red eyes, and weekend calls. And he just waltzed in thinking he could demo charm and close. I left the office that day feeling like I'd been quietly euthanized. Now here I was, 2 weeks later, officially out. Bag in hand, contract in inbox. Watching as my own professional obituary got drafted in real time by someone who thought client success meant having a custom font. The only thing left was to wait. Because something was coming. Aaron hadn't texted me that message at 5 a.m. for no reason. He'd seen the forecast, heard the thunder before it cracked. And somewhere in a sleek glass building across town, a boardroom was already being set. The sound my badge made when I dropped it on the HR desk was like a coffin nail tapping its final echo. Not a slam. Not a toss. Just a quiet click of finality. My whole career at that company, 8 years, 3 major client recoveries, 2 promotions that came with leadership opportunities, but never the matching title. And it all ended with a plastic rectangle sliding across fake mahogany. I placed the laptop beside it. The screen still glowed faintly with the login prompt, waiting for credentials that wouldn't matter by lunchtime. The HR rep, a guy named Jared who once asked me at a holiday party if I still used AOL, cleared his throat and nudged a few papers toward me like they were coated in anthrax. I added the standard clauses, COBRA, PTO balance, exit date as today, unless you'd like to delay for formal appeal." I stared at him for a beat. Jared always had this look like someone had just farted near his hummus. Today it looked personal. "I'm not appealing," I said. "You can mark it." He hesitated. "It'll be marked as voluntary non-participation, per the VP's communication." "I know." "Okay, just checking." His hand fluttered like it wanted to adjust his tie, but he wasn't wearing one. Do you want someone to walk you out? That one almost made me laugh, like I was a perp in a courtroom drama. Or maybe a contagious idea they needed to quarantine before the infection spread to anyone else who still gave a damn. No thanks. I know the way. He nodded, visibly relieved. The pen he handed me was one of those cheap giveaway pens from a vendor we cut ties with 2 years ago. It scratched across the paper like it resented being used for this kind of work. I signed. No tears, no handshakes, just the ceremony of indifference performed in soft lighting and recycled air. As I stood to leave, Jared asked, "Do you want to say goodbye to your team?" Team, like the word still applied. Like I hadn't already been erased from Slack channels and Google Sheets and strategy threads the moment Eli hit send on that email. "No," I said. "They'll figure it out." He opened his mouth to say something else, but closed it again. I walked past him, out into the hallway, down the corridor lined with inspirational posters. Excellence is a habit. Teamwork makes the dream work. All that sad vinyl optimism. And pushed through the double doors into the lobby. No one stopped me. I paused by the front desk just long enough to pull out my phone. Opened my personal Gmail. Attached a PDF from the encrypted folder I'd kept since the original contract closed. Benton Global Client Agreement. Executed copy final.pdf. The subject line, insurance policy. To me. Then I hit send. The elevator dinged like it knew. I stepped inside and looked at my reflection in the brushed metal walls. I looked like someone who hadn't just lost her job. I looked like someone who'd stepped out of a chess game mid-checkmate and realized the other guy was playing Connect 4. Outside, the wind had picked up. The sky had that odd pre-storm yellow to it, the kind that makes birds quiet and people anxious. I walked to my car, past the smoking area where Rob from facilities was squinting at his phone and pretending not to see me. He raised a half-hearted wave. I nodded back. No one else looked up. The ride home was silent. No radio, no podcasts, just the hum of tires and the occasional rattle of my glove box. My mind flicked through snapshots like a crime board. Eli's rehearsed smirk, Aaron's 5 a.m. text, the contract clause with my name on it in Section 14, Subpart B. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was weightless. Like something had been cut loose that I didn't realize had been dragging behind me for years. My front porch light was still on, even though it was noon. Inside, I kicked off my shoes and stared at the wall for a full minute before I realized I was still holding my purse like a briefcase. I dropped it on the table. Pulled out my laptop, my personal one this time, opened the inbox. There it was. My email to myself, staring back at me like a lifeboat. I didn't open it yet. I just smiled. Something told me the people in that 11 a.m. pitch meeting were about to find out what a key person dependency actually meant, and I didn't have to lift a single damn finger. Eli Daniels walked into that boardroom like a man who'd just won a sales award no one else had applied for. Slick gray suit, brown leather shoes with no socks, because that's what the podcasts say power looks like now, and a smile like he'd just been told he was the smartest guy at the table before anyone else arrived. He gave the receptionist a wink, fist bumped the junior associate trailing behind him, and adjusted his tie like he thought there might be cameras. There weren't. But you couldn't tell Eli that. To him, this pitch wasn't just a meeting. It was a coronation. The room he was stepping into, however, was the opposite of warm. Executive conference suite on the 31st floor of Benton Global's HQ. Big glass windows, a 12-person polished table, and a silence so precise you could hear someone shift in their chair from across the room. The client's CEO, Rhonda Liu, sat dead center. She wasn't scrolling her phone. She wasn't sipping coffee. She was staring straight at the door like it owed her an explanation. The general counsel, Aaron Patel, the same Aaron who texted me at 5 a.m., sat 2 seats down, pen in hand, legal pad untouched. Eli didn't notice the chill. "Good morning," he beamed, setting his laptop on the table like he was unveiling a cake. "I'm Eli Daniels, VP of Strategic Advancement at Halden Partners. So thrilled to be here." No one responded. He clicked his presentation remote like it was a wand. Slide 1. A high-res image of a road winding through a canyon. Text overlay. Navigating forward together. I want to first thank everyone here at Benton Global for your continued trust. Today's presentation will showcase how we've streamlined operations, restructured internal silos, and reimagined the next phase of our partnership. Rhonda didn't blink. Aaron twirled his pen once, then stopped. Slide 2. a list of key deliverables. Bullet points lifted from my 3-year roadmap, renamed, repackaged, but unmistakably mine. Only difference was my name wasn't anywhere near them. In fact, it wasn't on any slide. Eli rambled on, doing that thing where insecure executives say, circle back, and move the needle, as if repetition makes them real. His voice carried the self-satisfaction of a man who thought using the word disruption 3 times per slide made him innovative. His team, 2 analysts and a woman from compliance, nodded along like dashboard bobbleheads. By minute 12, Rhonda still hadn't spoken. Neither had Aaron. The CFO, a man named Terrence who usually greeted everyone like they were lifelong poker buddies, sat with his chin resting on one hand, expression unreadable. Eli kept going. Slide 7. Risk mitigation strategies. A flowchart I'd personally built after the client's Q2 product recall fiasco, scrubbed clean of context, polished with icons, and stripped of the story behind it. Still no mention of me. Still no eye contact from the client. Still no idea. Eli, oblivious, gestured toward the screen. What we've done here is remove redundancies and pivot away from dependency on legacy systems and personnel. That word, legacy. That was the flag he'd planted 2 weeks ago in my back during the team call. The same word he used to make it sound like experience was a problem. Now he used it like a buzzword solution. We solved the legacy issue, without realizing he'd just announced he'd yanked the only functioning parachute out of the plane mid-flight. Aaron Patel leaned back in his chair. Rhonda Liu finally spoke. Can you walk us through your continuity plan for the compliance protocols Kayla Bennett managed? Eli blinked, smiled. Absolutely. Our internal team has absorbed all relevant deliverables. Everything is documented and cross-functionalized, horizontally integrated, within our strategy pod. Aaron tilted his head. Which team member specifically is responsible for what Kayla previously owned? Well, Eli started, glancing at his analyst, who immediately looked down like she'd just been asked to recite pi backwards. It's distributed. There was a pause so sharp it felt like someone had cut the oxygen. Rhonda closed her notebook. Aaron finally clicked his pen. Eli, still grinning, said, Any other questions before we move into performance benchmarks? There were, but none of them came from him. Because what he didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that every word he was saying, every slide he was advancing, was being weighed against one glaring omission. Me. The woman who built every strategy he was standing on. The room wasn't cold anymore. It was quiet. And underneath that quiet was something far worse. Recognition. Halfway through the presentation, the room felt like a soundproof box underwater. Still. Pressurized. Every tick of the wall clock above the double glass doors sounded like a hammer on bone. Eli didn't notice. He kept clicking through slides like he was pitching a vacation package instead of a multi-million-dollar operational renewal. Slide 14. Client Journey Touchpoints. The screen showed a colorful roadmap with bubbly icons, most of which had originated in my original client retention model. Eli had rounded the edges, replaced the Excel charts with Canva graphics, and swapped my title slide, Strategic Partner Integration Timeline, with Engagement Evolution 2.0. Because buzzwords sell better when they sound like energy drinks. Rhonda Liu, the CEO of Benton Global, sat motionless. Her elbows rested gently on the table, hands steepled, her jawline tight. Her eyes, dark, flat, sharp, tracked every word without revealing a damn thing. Her body language had all the warmth of a locked safe. To her left, Aaron Patel, their general counsel, didn't look at the screen once. He didn't even glance at the materials printed and laid neatly in front of him. Instead, he scribbled notes on a legal pad in that quiet, unnerving way lawyers do when they already know the answer and are just waiting for someone to lie. No one was smiling. No polite head nods. No interruptions. It was the kind of silence seasoned clients used as a scalpel, testing pressure points without saying a word. Eli didn't register it. He kept going. So, as you can see, by removing redundant oversight and streamlining workflows, we've managed to compress the response pipeline by nearly 16%. Our pod-based approach ensures modular continuity, even during personnel transitions. It was a parade of nonsense. An expensive string of placeholder phrases in a room that already knew how to spot filler. Slide 18, Slide 19, Slide 20. Finally, someone spoke. Terrence Marshall, the CFO, bald, slow-speaking, rarely emotional, set down his pen and asked in a voice that carried just enough curiosity to slice, "So what's your plan for knowledge continuity now that Kayla Bennett's gone?" The air went still. Eli's smile didn't fade, but it tightened slightly at the corners. He tapped his clicker nervously before setting it down. "Our team has the deck," he said, gesturing vaguely toward his analysts like they were backup dancers who knew the choreography. "Everything Kayla was handling has been thoroughly documented and is fully embedded in the current model." The room didn't blink. Aaron looked up for the first time. "Embedded?" "Yes, absorbed by the team. Operationalized," Eli said, doubling down like jargon would plug the crater. Rhonda tilted her head. Just a fraction. But it was enough to feel like the entire building shifted with her. "And you're confident your team can answer legal and compliance-related issues without Kayla's context?" she asked. Eli hesitated. "Of course. Our legal team reviewed everything during the handoff." Aaron's pen hovered over his pad. There was no formal handoff. I was told she chose not to appear for the pitch today." Aaron set the pen down. There was a hum now, not from any machine, but in the air itself. The unmistakable buzz of something tilting off its axis. The analysts exchanged tight glances. The compliance officer's smile had vanished. The room had begun to recalibrate, and Eli, oblivious, kept trying to sell fireworks in a thunderstorm. "I assure you," he pressed, "we've maintained the core deliverables. The IP is fully retained within our internal systems. All client-facing materials have been transitioned." Aaron leaned back, his fingers tapping his knee like a metronome. "Transitioned to whom?" Eli looked around. "To our strategy pod, collectively." Silence again. This time, it landed like a sentence. Rhonda tapped her finger twice against the armrest. Then she spoke, calm even. "Kayla worked with us through 3 major crises: a product recall, a supply chain breakdown, and a federal audit. She did not rely on decks. She relied on knowing us." Eli opened his mouth. Rhonda raised one hand, barely. "Let's skip to your continuity plan if something fails next quarter. Say your model breaks. Who will pick up the phone at 11 p.m. and know which patch rollout failed? Which regional team in Baltimore forgot to update their compliance node? Which vendor is 3 weeks late because their subcontractor filed bankruptcy?" Eli blinked. Because Kayla knew that, without looking. The room was stone. Aaron reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thin folder, placed it neatly on the table. No one touched it yet, but the silence around it told you everything. The question had already been answered. The folder made a soft chaff as Aaron Patel opened it, like the kind of sound that doesn't announce itself, but somehow makes everyone stop breathing. A pair of thin reading glasses appeared from his jacket pocket, not dramatic, just deliberate. He perched them on the bridge of his nose, the way someone might before reading a will, or a death sentence. Eli paused mid-gesture, clicker in hand, caught in that awkward limbo between the end of his last slide and the start of the applause he assumed would follow. Instead, he watched Aaron slowly rotate the folder toward him across the gleaming mahogany table, stopping with a precision that made it feel premeditated. "This," Aaron said softly, tapping a single paragraph in the printed contract, "is your clause." Eli blinked at it. One yellow highlighted section. No legalese to hide behind. Just a simple, brutal sentence. "Key person dependency. Termination of named staff shall constitute breach." Below it, typed in bold, "Kayla M. Bennett." The room went silent in a way that didn't feel like waiting. It felt like sentencing. Eli's mouth opened. A faint exhale. He looked up, then back down. I didn't know she was listed as..." Aaron didn't look up. Didn't need to. "You should have checked." The words weren't harsh. They were just surgical. Rhonda's chair creaked as she leaned back. Her expression didn't change, but the lack of change said everything. A well of disappointment so deep it didn't even need to be voiced. Her fingers folded across her lap like she was waiting to see whether a dog would keep barking or finally learn to sit. "I was under the impression that she stepped away voluntarily," Eli muttered, the words shrinking as they left his mouth. Aaron nodded once. "And your impression replaced due diligence?" Eli said nothing. You could almost hear the slide deck weeping in the background. Across from him, the junior analyst slowly slid her notepad under her laptop. Not quitting, just disappearing. The compliance officer stared at the table like she was calculating the velocity at which she could escape the room without shattering glass. Terrence, the CFO, tapped his pen once, sharply. Breach of contract, he muttered under his breath, not to anyone in particular, just to the air, like he wanted the room to hear what was now echoing in every mind. Erin closed the folder without looking at Eli again. The clause is binding. She was named for a reason. Eli's voice cracked a little. This wasn't flagged in the internal transition audit. That's because you didn't ask anyone who would have known. Erin raised his eyes now. You replaced knowledge with structure, relationship with framework, loyalty with a deck. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Kayla wasn't legacy, Erin continued, standing slowly. She was the contract. Eli flinched like the words had been aimed lower than his chest. Can't this be amended? He tried. Renegotiated? Rhonda finally stood. No, she said simply. The moment she was dismissed, this agreement fell into breach. We continued the meeting out of professional courtesy. Erin added, and to document the record. Eli's clicker dropped to the table with a soft thud. For the first time, he looked like he'd run out of words. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of every decision, every overlooked email, every time he'd nodded through meetings instead of listening. It was full of Kayla, the woman whose name he'd erased to make room for himself. Terrence stood too. This means Q4's dead, he said quietly to no one in particular. Dead and buried. Eli reached for the contract again, as if rereading it might change what was already sealed in black ink. His fingers trembled slightly. He was looking for a loophole, a clause, a grace period. But all he found was her name, and his mistake. The silence cracked first with a throat clear from Halden's in-house legal counsel. Robert, a man who once bragged during a holiday mixer that he'd read more contracts than he had hot dinners. But in this moment, he looked pale, like someone had just handed him a subpoena written in blood. He leaned forward, tie slightly askew, papers clutched in one hand like a child gripping a security blanket. This clause, he stammered, voice pitched higher than usual, was never flagged in our contractual review. I don't believe it was disclosed during our transition documentation. It should have triggered an internal red line. Erin didn't even bother to turn his head. It was disclosed, he said evenly, repeatedly. Robert's eyes darted toward Eli, who looked like a man realizing the floor he'd been standing on wasn't a stage. It was a trapdoor. Rhonda adjusted her blazer cuff, as if bored of the excuses. She brought it up last year during your joint QBR. She highlighted the clause when we discussed renewal. I recall she used the phrase essential personnel risk. You nodded. Eli's mouth opened, then closed. He looked around the room, as if expecting someone to jump in with a lifeline. No one did. The junior analyst stared at her cuticles. The compliance officer reached for her water like it might give her an exit strategy. Erin tapped the contract folder once. Tap, a gavel without ceremony. We won't be moving forward with the current team unless Kayla Bennett is reinstated. Effective immediately. Not as staff. As lead. Rhonda leaned in slightly. And with decision-making authority. This relationship will not continue under a structure that removed her without understanding what she carried. Eli tried to collect himself, straightening his spine in the chair, clutching at the rags of his credibility like a man trying to look dignified while his pants are around his ankles. Look, I can call her. We can bring her back. She didn't seem opposed to coming in. Maybe she just needed a moment. Erin held up one hand. You don't call her. We will. Terrence, who'd remained quiet until now, finally turned to Eli. No longer whispering, but low enough that only those closest heard. You just cost us Q4. The words hit harder than any raised voice. They landed with weight, the kind that moves budget forecasts, derails earnings calls, and sends shareholder meetings into spin. Eli's jaw clenched. We can fix this. Rhonda raised her eyebrows. Can you? No answer. Terrence rubbed the bridge of his nose. You didn't lose a contract. You lost the contract holder. Eli turned toward Robert, desperate. Can't we nullify the clause? Argue procedural ambiguity? Robert shook his head slowly, defeated. No judge would side with us. Not with her track record. Not with the documentation trail. Aaron flipped his legal pad closed and stood. We'll give you 48 hours to respond in writing, but be advised. Benton Global is now preparing to explore alternative partnerships unless Kayla Bennett is returned to the table. He glanced around, lingering on Eli last. And she won't come back to sit next to you. She'll come back in your seat. Eli's face twitched. I've invested significant time repositioning this account. And unpositioning its foundation, Rhonda snapped, her voice still measured but now razor-edged. This is a relationship business. You replaced a vault with a vending machine. Don't look surprised when someone else takes the combination with them. The chairs scraped back as the Benton team stood. The meeting was over. Not adjourned, over. No handshakes, no promises, just the cold click of Aaron's briefcase latching shut. As they exited the room, Eli didn't move. He sat frozen, hands twitching near his laptop, staring at the final slide still glowing on the screen. The road ahead. A line drawn into nothing. My phone rang at 4:37 p.m. Unknown number. Office area code. 3 rings before voicemail. Then silence. 2 minutes later, ding, an email from legal. Subject, reconnection request. Another ding, HR. I waited. Let it breathe. Then I opened the first one. It was laced with corporate perfume. We recognize the value you've brought to the firm. Recent events have led to a reassessment of internal transitions, and, my personal favorite, a unique opportunity to reintegrate your leadership. A paragraph down, they dangled a title. Senior Director, Strategic Enterprise Partnerships. I was Strategic Account Lead when they escorted me out. Cute how adding more words was supposed to make it smell less like a bribe. HR's message followed suit. We're prepared to revisit your compensation package to reflect your institutional impact. Translation, we need your name, your credibility, your clause, and your silence. I made tea. Not because I was stressed, because I knew this was the part where they tried to dress up desperation in a tailored apology. But there's always a rip at the seam. I dialed back. Let it ring just long enough to make someone sweat. Maya from legal answered. Her voice tried to be chipper but cracked like it had been rehearsing too long. Kayla, so glad you called. We've been doing some thinking internally, and, look, we all know the past 24 hours have been a whirlwind. The client gave us some tough feedback. You mean they threatened to walk? I said calmly. A pause. Well, we'd rather not frame it like that. You don't have to. I already know how they framed it. She cleared her throat. The point is, there's a sincere recognition of the unique role you've played, and we want to fix this. Eli has expressed openness to collaboration moving forward. That won't be necessary. Another pause. This one longer. Kayla, we're offering you your position back. Upgraded title, better compensation, more autonomy. We just need to realign. Stop. I let the word land soft but final. Then I leaned back, held my tea, and said what I'd been holding since the moment they pushed me out. That contract listed me as key person, not your puppet. Silence. A rustling of papers in the background. Probably someone scrambling to write that line down so they could study it later under fluorescent lights. I'm not interested in walking back into a cage you just polished, I continued. You didn't see my value when you had me. You don't get to reclaim it now that the room's on fire. Is there anything we can say to change your mind? There is, I said, and then I hung up. Not 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. Different number. Different tone. Aaron Patel's voice, steady and low. Kayla, Rhonda would like to speak with you. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just stayed on the line. A soft click, then her voice. Ms. Bennett, Rhonda said, like I hadn't sat across from her dozens of times, guided her team through regulatory chaos, fought back fires that should have buried 3 departments. Today, though, I wasn't her vendor. I was the lever that had moved her world. We'd like to discuss an independent engagement, she said. Not an apology, not a plea, a proposition. My eyes flicked to the contract folder on my desk. This was the real offer. Consultant, I said softly. Principal consultant, she replied, With autonomy, full authority. We'll transfer the operational charter to your firm, if you're interested. I stood, walked to the window, watched the sun dip behind the crooked spire of the old bank building downtown. I'm interested, I said, and for the first time in a week, I felt the weight come off my chest. Not with a bang, not with vengeance, but with something rarer. A choice. My choice. The marble floors in Benton Global's private boardroom had this quiet that only real money could buy. You don't hear footsteps in rooms like that. You feel them. The weight of presence, intent, consequence. I walked in at 9:01 a.m., no Halden badge clipped to my belt, no company-branded laptop bag slung over my shoulder. Just me. In slate gray heels, carrying a leather folio with my firm's logo embossed across the front. Bennett's Strategic Advisory. My own. Finally. Rhonda Lou didn't stand when I entered. She didn't need to. She just tilted her head in acknowledgement, the kind reserved for war generals returning from exile. Aaron Patel gave me the kind of look that says, "Good, you made them pay first." I sat without asking, opened the folio, slid a document across the table like it was a weapon she already knew how to use. Scope of engagement, I said. Principal consultancy. Direct reporting line to Benton's C-suite. Full autonomy. No intermediary approval from Halden or any successor vendor. All account intelligence, transition protocols, and oversight to be centralized through me and my team. Aaron was already flipping through the pages before I'd finished. Rhonda didn't even glance at her assistant. She reached for a pen. Signed. Just like that. No counters. No red lines. No "we'll get back to yous." It was already done before I walked in. "Welcome home," Rhonda said, closing the folder with the kind of finality that makes entire org charts obsolete. We talked for another 15 minutes, but the meeting had ended with the ink. I shook their hands, collected my copy, walked out of that building the same way I'd walked in. Quiet, precise, untouchable. Back at Halden's downtown office, the temperature had shifted. Eli Daniels didn't come in that morning. Or maybe he tried. But by 10:15 a.m., a company-wide message went out. Effective immediately, Eli Daniels will be stepping away from his position as Vice President of Strategic Advancement. Stepping away, like he just wandered off toward a better view. I heard from 3 different former coworkers, one from marketing, one from IT, and one from HR, each describing with increasing detail and delight how compliance had opened a formal review into Eli's oversight of contractual documentation, improper transition handling, and willful negligence in a key client relationship. Apparently, someone on the 19th floor saw him get walked out. No box. Just a man in silence. No one clapped, but no one looked away either. That night, I poured a bourbon, sat at my kitchen table with the signed contract in front of me, ran my fingers over the signature. Rhonda's ink was still faintly smudged at the loop of the L. I didn't gloat, didn't scream into the void or post a cryptic victory quote online. I just thought about the line Eli missed when he skimmed the contract, the clause he ignored, the person he dismissed. You don't replace roots with paper clips and expect the tree to hold. The next morning, a junior analyst from Halden emailed me. "We didn't realize how much you handled. I'm sorry." I replied 2 hours later. "No hard feelings," I wrote. Then I deleted the thread, because it didn't matter anymore. The client had never needed a company. They needed me. And Eli? He should have trusted his key person.